All right, so I see two gorgets here, thank you, on the table. One of them is the one that's been made by Sue Hell and his craftsman, and there's the original. And we have some differences in construction that we're going to try to describe, and so that we can actually get made the product that we need to get made. So Eric is here, and he's going to be doing the description of what sorts of changes that we're going to be looking for in the next iteration, which I hope is the final product. So hit it, Eric.
Okay. All right, so the major thing is the overall shape of the Gorget. So again, this one is the one we're aiming for. This is what we received. Now it may or may not have gotten some damage in shipping because it looks a little asymmetrically squished. But the biggest thing I want to point out is that each piece must be symmetrical within itself. It can't have a tighter curve here and a shallower curve here, for example. It should be even on both sides.
So a circle or an oval?
Semicircle.
Semicircle.
A bit more of an ellipse or an oval.
Okay.
And I can take the pieces apart and show that. It might be easier to show on a raw part here.
Okay, so that is a raw part. It is symmetrical left to right.
So it's a little more broad in the front. You guys did very good on that. Then it starts to curve more sharply on both sides. That's where there's a bit of a mistake here, where it curves sharply here, but not here.
I see.
And then the biggest mistake is if you look at the interface between the two plates, they're not quite flush with each other. If we compare that with my gorgets here, do you see how they lay much flatter in this point?
Yes.
That's what we're aiming for. We don't want this gap here where I can stick my finger, and we definitely don't want that. So what this should look like when the shaping is correct is it should lay flat like that, not be at a sharp angle here.
I see.
And that needs to happen on both sides.
So how do you achieve that symmetry when you're doing your build? Do you have an example of the construction technique you're using?
Yes, and one more thing I want to show.
Okay.
The reason that is important is so that when the customer adjusts sizing, so if they loosen the straps, we still have good overlap here. And then when they tighten it up, we still have good overlap. If we're at an acute angle, like this,
and the parts stick out.
then when they're in one setting, it's a little hard to show here. When they're in one setting, it's here, and when we're here, it doesn't really quite work.
I understand.
We want it to be smooth in both directions.
Got it. So if there appears to be a sort of a flatter space as it approaches the portion near the junction. So you're using this pipe. How big is this pipe? I guess you have different pipes for different...
Yes, different size pipes have, different size gorgets have different size pipes.
Right.
What diameter pipe you guys use is going to depend on the temper, the hardness of your steel. Different batches of steel I get will require bending over different size pipes in order to account for the springiness.
That's very interesting.
So I can't give you guys an exact number, but I can say that this one is just under 4.5 inches.
Okay.
Or about 11 centimeters.
Okay.
And this is the pipe that I use for my large and medium sizes.
I understand.
So if you come around over here,
Okay.
so I just bend these by hand. Don't pinch and make a crease on the center. You guys did very good at that. So give a little bit of a shape here. Actually, let me just do this on my own.
Okay, so we'll take, this is just a piece of the steel, obviously gloving up.
So, and you guys did just fine here. Don't bend this all the way in the center. Move to either side, do a stronger bend. And then once you get to the part where this curve really starts coming in, almost when you get to that hole, that's when you really want to get every bit of bend you can out of it on both sides.
Got it. So there's no hammering involved. It's just bending around this round mandrel.
There will be hammering. Now the shape we have here is a pretty good start.
Okay.
This is a little too sharp here, but we'll fix that in a moment, at least the way I do it. You guys obviously will have your method. And this will hurt the ears a little bit.
It's fine.
Now that flat spot, this is where people get tripped up, and it looks like you guys did as well, because I don't have the leverage in order to really bend this down.
Of course, that's when you have to tap it with the
So,
soft mallet.
Offset slightly, I use a rawhide. And flatten that out. Okay? So I'll do the same thing on the other side. You can see I'm doing this from about halfway between the strapping hole and these end holes. Right about here, to the end.
Right. Because you don't have enough material to grab onto to shape it otherwise.
Now, if you look here, that's straightened the sides, but we're a little bit too steep here. That happens sometimes, so I just take out that bend slightly, and then I'll do an overall curve to fight the bend, to fight the springiness of the steel.
Okay.
And what that does is it gives us our final shape. These two ends here should be parallel.
Right.
So they shouldn't be pointing off away from each other. They should be parallel. Also, when you look at it on end, these edges should be almost parallel with each other. If anything's slightly tilted this way,
then it won't interface properly with the front plane.
But if I show you guys on this, you see how they're much more...
Oh yeah, they're splayed outwards. Oh, and they're leaning as well.
Yes, we don't want that. We want it to be almost parallel.
Got it.
Okay. So you do the same thing on the front plate, and what we're going for here is just a little bit of wiggle to allow room for the leather. But otherwise, we want this nice smooth interface.
Perfect.
Okay, what we don't want is to have this center part be too steep. And yeah, what I'll do is I'll do one wrong.
Okay.
So that was correct. I haven't screwed it up yet.
Okay.
But let's say I don't hammer the ends in, and so we end up with something like that.
Now
when we go to interface,
it has that same splay that the other one did.
Is the problem with the sample we received.
Got it. So how do you correct that?
So the
Do
solution...
you actually have to twist it?
Well, this display I'm talking about here is not, if you look at the top one here, is not where it lays flat, but where it's at an angle.
Oh, I see. Well, yes, hammering it would take that tip in, right?
There's also that problem there. Now, you can just bend
that problem, could you articulate that?
Meaning
yes, meaning the bottom edge is leaning out from the top edge. Okay.
Now we could just twist it in, but that's not the best solution. The best solution to that is actually to make sure that you're not turning the piece as you curl it.
Oh, got it. You have to keep it very
if you
straight.
Start it symmetrical, stay symmetrical.
Okay.
So when I get to here, if you want to come around and look from above.
Right. So what you're doing is you're making sure that you're not turning the piece on the mandrel.
So not this.
Right.
This is correct, not correct.
Got it.
Okay.
And then rawhiding that end in will both take in that edge and also correct the problem.
Now, do you see how heavily I'm bending the bottom here?
Indeed.
That's what's going to correct that.
All right.
And so when we do this, see how we don't quite fit?
Right.
That's because in here is too steep. So again, take that bend out a little bit.
Right.
And then I'm going to add the bend here and here.
I see.
And this you can do with a broader spacing of your hands. And again, don't line this up this way.
Don't rotate it on the mandrel. Keep it aligned, in line with the mandrel, irrespective of what's happening with the end.
Okay, so then I'm going to look at it and make sure that we have a symmetrical curve.
Yes.
I don't want it steeper here or shallower here. We want it to be even.
Right.
And we're still a little bit tight, so I'm just going to open it up just a bit more. Now I'm going to curl just on the very ends. Again, symmetrical, both sides. And that looks pretty good.
Okay. That's a pretty good description. Is there anything else in terms of the construction that...
One last thing I want to add is you see how the ends here are, again, fairly parallel. They're not leaning out.
Right.
So if we compare these...
Yeah. Yeah, the bottom edges are definitely leaning outwards. Okay. And that would make all the difference in fit.
And the last thing I'll show is you can see how mine fits inside in the overall shape. Again, it's just a little more semicircular. You don't want it to be so open as this one is. You want it to be a closed circle.
Yeah, it seems as though just that rawhide detail on the end probably makes all the difference.
That's the critical part.
Okay.
But it's also where you put the curve. You just want to make sure in this section here, that's where it's very important.
Okay. Well, if needs be, I suppose we can deliver a circular template.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. All right, great. So that's the detail.
So what you guys did very well. This front plate is excellent. The shaping is good. The way it sits is very good. I'm very happy with that. One other detail on the rivets, this rivet here, if you compare it...
Oh, yep, there was a flat rivet there
mine,
to prevent it from getting hung up on that rivet.
Now what I do is I take a belt rivet and I put it on the inside. That's not necessarily the only solution, but there should be a flat-headed rivet here to avoid an interference issue. And
Right.
what you guys did is you had to bend it a little bit more to go over. We want to avoid that.
Okay.
The upper rivets should be solid rivets, just like the bottom. These double cap rivets are no good. We don't want those.
Right.
Same thing on the back here where that lobster tail, this extra plate sits, which again, you guys did perfect at shaping this, but we want a flat head rivet here as well.
Right. So we don't have any extra bulk.
And what I use for that looks like that.
So it's a copper. Interesting.
Yep,
A
no,
flat-headed copper rivet.
It
That's
doesn't have to be identical to this, but this should be flat-headed, but not a double cap rivet. Those
right.
are the ideas.
Yeah. Double cap rivets don't belong on in any part of this this piece.
Correct. All right, let me think. Your edge grinding, your beveling of the edges, there's nothing sharp. I'm very happy with that. That's very good. Your shaping of the plates, cutting-wise, is just fine.
Leather fitment's excellent too.
The leather fitment, your consistency here is very, very good. The straps, however, are a problem.
Oh, they're terrible. But it was only a holding place.
Correct. But do you want this on the video?
Sure. Yeah.
So my straps are about 5/8 of an inch wide. Whatever is close to that in metric will be just fine. We definitely want a double posted buckle.
Right. Center bar.
Yep, and the reason for that is we just don't want
We don't want the tail flapping up. Right. Yeah. So
but-
center bar buckle.
But this is way too wide. This really needs to be much narrower.
Right.
And similarly, these straps here are way too flimsy. Use the same straps as you use for this here, please.
Okay.
And the other construction detail.
Now that's a different leather. This is a Latigo.
That's a
5.6 Latigo.
Correct.
Okay.
6.7 Latigo.
6.7 Latigo. Okay.
Yep, correct. And the last construction detail is some of the rivets here. It's fine to use brass, but so for example, these rivets are peened quite well. This one is not. This has sharp edges on it. And if we compare to mine, granted I'm using copper, so it's a bit easier, but we want no sharp edges. You should be able to run your finger across these and not get caught,
Yeah.
not get stuck.
Okay.
So for example, let's say I take this paper towel here.
Right. Obviously, it's
You
sharp
don't want that to happen.
because that's someone's neck there.
Yes. Whereas on this, I can do this all day.
And you're not going to
Nothing
snap.
happens.
Super.
So that's critically important. That's going to be an absolute must details to make sure that these rivets are peened a fair bit better. Some of them are good, but others, you just need to hit them a bit more. And so what I would show is if you want to come over here.
Oh, they know how to flatten a rivet.
Oh, we're all set? Okay.
All right, great. Super. Thank you very much.